And next up, we will give the stage to the representatives of the industry. And first, we have King Lee from the World Nuclear Association, giving a talk on the Harmony project and how to scale up the nuclear sector in a sense. Yeah, stage is yours. Let's give a big hand to King.
Thank you very much for inviting me to give the talk. I'm from the World Nuclear Association. The global nuclear industry body. I'm going to talk about the Harmony program. It's our campaign to promote nuclear energy worldwide. Kirsty and Ben have made a very convincing case for change and the need to address the energy challenge, so I won't really talk about that. And I will be focusing at my talk about the Harmony goal. What we're trying to achieve really is 25% of the electricity coming from nuclear energy by 2050. Also, I'm not going to really talk about the advantage of nuclear energy, and I think hopefully within the right audience you will appreciate the value of nuclear energy. But really, I'm going to really focus my talk about what we see as the challenges in terms of growing the nuclear energy from a global perspective, and what we call the Harmony objective, the action that's needed to achieve that Harmony goal, and talk about our program, which is perhaps used metaphor as a journey, and welcome sort of your input and support regarding the Harmony program. Just to emphasize Kirsty and Ben's point, there's a real energy challenge. So most models anticipate we're going to base the model on the IEA model, which energy demand will increase. And the essential from this graph is we are not on track. And we're a long way from on track. This is the 2-degree scenario, and with the ambition of 1.5 degrees. So, and this graph is based on the intended nationally determined contributions. So the world have got a long way to go in order to meet the energy challenge. So things got to change, and got to change quickly. For the World Nuclear Association, our campaign for Harmony is that our aim is 25% of the global electricity coming from nuclear energy. That compared to about 18% from the current IEA forecast. To achieve 25% electricity, we anticipate about 1,000 gigawatt of new nuclear capacity need to come online by 2050. And this is achievable. This will require ramping up to about 33 gigawatt of new build per year with connection rate. And this has already been achieved in the 1980s. And currently, the world are capable of delivering that rate, but obviously have been shown by recent projects in Europe and in US. There have to be significance of building of capability, but in projects in UAE and elsewhere shown that the part of in Asia we can deliver project to cost and to time and and to quality. So that's part of the challenge, is how to deliver that goal. We constantly see there are three main barriers to delivering nuclear. One is about the market and energy policy. We see there's currently a failure in the electricity market, especially in liberalized electricity market. The second is a regulatory barrier, where we don't have a common regulatory, international regulatory framework. And lastly is public confidence and public acceptance for nuclear energy. So there's what we called a misconception about risk and benefit between nuclear energy and other energy sources. So for Harmony, to address those barriers and challenges, we have defined three objectives. One, regarding market, what we call level playing field. And secondly, to address the regulatory aspect, we would like to have internationally harmonized regulatory processes. And thirdly, what we call effective safety paradigms, to address the misconception of risk. Highlighting, those are the three actions that we identified. They're not intending at this stage to address all issues, but we need to start from somewhere. So for example, we haven't talked about ways, and obviously that is important in some markets. But hopefully as the campaign moves forward, some of the other issues will be addressed later on. I'll talk about each one of these in a little bit more detail. Our objective is to really establish a level playing field of the energy market, because at the moment we have existing nuclear power plant that's well performing, closing down, both in Europe and in US from an economic point of view, not just purely from a policy, government policy, but purely from a market. And also, at the moment, the market doesn't provide the incentive to invest in nuclear energy for new build without particular government interventions. For example, in UK, the government policy providing the CDF have created a market mechanism for new build, but that's not the case in most other markets. So we see currently in most markets where non-polluting energy sources are not recognized, and there's no level playing field, so different non-polluting sources are treated differently. So we really would like to see first of all, the market to be addressed, to provide the incentive for existing nuclear power plants to carry on operating, and to create the environment for new investment. No. In a way, this is I think, a bigger challenge for the industry. Currently, it's a national responsibility to license and to regulate nuclear power. However, that created a divergence and fragmentation of licensing process and requirements. So as an example, EDF is building in Finland, same reactor in France and UK. That have been licensed 3 times, and we are ending up 3 different designs. This is a very inefficient way of regulating and very costly. So in UK, so this, I think it's not only in terms of cost, but timescale. UK have just now licensed the EPR to be built in UK, and they have taken over 6 years for that to occur. And so in order for a rapid growth of nuclear energy, we need to have a standardized licensing process internationally. And also that's benefit from a cost point of view, then you have a standardized design and be able to accelerate both investment, have a much more, for the investor, much more certainty and reduce the investment risk as well. And that will help the supply chain to reduce costs. The third item I'm going to talk about, what we call effective safety paradigm. As I mentioned, there's a misconception about risk and benefit of nuclear energy compared to other energy sources. In order for nuclear energy to grow, public acceptance is critical. I think not only for Gen 3 reactors we need to deploy, and part of this conference is about potentially advanced reactors. So the world not only have electricity demand challenge, but also, mentioned by Ben, an energy challenge. That means we have to decarbonize heating, transportation. And the only way we can do that is beyond the current model using large reactors on remote sites away from population. That means potentially deploying advanced reactors closer to community centers and replacing for industrial use. That means adjacent to or in combination to industrial sites. So that means our way to use and accept the public and the regulator accepting the use of nuclear have to be completely changed, our current use of nuclear. So we need a greater public understanding and acceptance in order for a nuclear to grow. And that means the industry and wider public engagement have to engage the public perhaps in a different way. I think previously the industry really have focused on technical solutions to drive down, to make the energy, the reactor safer. But I think that hasn't really addressed public concern. We need to really, to get public acceptance, we really need to engage public in a more meaningful way and address their fear and concern, as well as improving the safety of nuclear power plants. And we've got a long way to go on this. And I think people recognize that I think this is the major issue in terms of whether nuclear energy will grow or not. In my view, it's not a technical challenge, really. It's a policy and the public challenge that the energy have to face. The association program just give you an overview. It's a journey. What we aim to do is on each one of those objectives, we're preparing some issue papers highlighting what the issues are and how we're going to be able to deal with those from an industry point of view. And we've got some draft of drafting the issue papers and then moving forward to what we call the white papers and promoting it. But it's essential that we build on developing the issue papers and white papers. Really built on what are the messages, how to communicate with key stakeholders and policymakers, and built the evidence to support those. And create allies and cooperation within the nuclear industries, but also others, essential stakeholders, who recognize the challenge the world faces to meeting the energy challenge. And working with renewables, we see that there's a huge energy challenge, and it's unlikely maybe been highlighted once technology provide all the solutions. And we're talking about such a long time scale. We don't know what the future holds. So we shouldn't really eliminate one particular technology from the potential mix. And it may be, from a nuclear person, that renewable and then with supplement with other technology can meet all the challenges. But from this point in time, I think is that we're taking a huge risk from some of the policy that currently taking, that eliminating particular energy source and banking that certain technology will be available to fulfill those gaps. So part of that will be then once those would be aimed to influence policymakers and advocate and influence. So I welcome sort of your input and support regarding the association Harmony program. Thank you.
Thank you, King. Any questions from the audience? There's one. Laura will bring the mic.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more about the goals which you have. But I'm curious to know, to which extent have you analyzed the causes and reasons of public in different countries to oppose nuclear energy this much as they do? And what are you doing to change these attitudes?
We haven't analysed in detail. I can perhaps give you, from my perspective, I think the way the industry, and there's a lot of historical aspects, how the industry have persuaded, communicated with the public. What the public, the industry have tried to address the safety problem by providing more information and aim to give the public confidence in that regard. While I think what the public need is trust. Trust not only the industry, but also the institutions, the wide range of institutions that between the public that govern the industry, the industry and so forth. I think what sometimes the public there's seems to be a lack of trust, and tends to then look for information that are available to them that they trust, whether that information provided right, whether that's scientifically robust or not. they have used those information. And I think that perhaps stemmed from examples recently in Asia and elsewhere. But what the industry or the industry need to do is make sure that we have the right conversation with the public in the right way and build up the right institution, both nationally and internationally, that the public can go to and make sure that there's a robust framework and institutional arrangement in place. That's from my perspective.
All right, good answer. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, we'll continue with the questions then later on, but thank you, King, for another great talk.